Day 3 of the NBA season. It's the Deeper Dive. Thursday, October 24th. Dave Loughran, Adam Scher. 3-gamer, man. We got a 2 and a 3-gamer to kick off the season.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing. Like, you get the 11-gamer yesterday, you start to get into it, and then you go right back to a 3-gamer today.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? That's actually not the disappointing part for me. I'm going to tell you what's disappointing to me is that somehow guys like Curry and Giannis and Harden and Westbrook are all egregiously underpriced on DraftKings. And it really just makes things, I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah, it's the same as yesterday. You had like that entire shooting guard range at $8,000 to $9,000. It's the same thing today. Like, it's just so easy to make lineups. Even with it being a 3-game slate, it's going to be a high scoring slate just because everyone is so cheap.
Yeah, and it's funny too. I mentioned to you right before the show, there are a lot of players on this slate, even though it's a 3-game slate. There are a lot of players on this slate that I look at and I say, man, on most days, I would have a whole lot of this guy and that guy and this guy, but they're just going to be very difficult to jam into lineups today on DraftKings, knowing that you're going to want to have like 3 of those studs in probably every lineup.
Yep, totally agree.
All right. Well, the Deeper Dive is presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, where you can get your $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, those YSRPs. If you haven't done so yet, we'll throw the link in chat right in a second in the YouTube chat. Click on that, and that'll take you to the premium or the free NFL primetime article, which you should read because EMAC does a phenomenal job for tonight's Thursday night showdown slate. Click on that, and you'll see the Yahoo link. Click that link, and it'll take you right there. Use the sign-up code AWESOMO. Unfortunately, we can't put the direct link to Yahoo and YouTube, which is why we have to do the roundabout way. But it's worth getting your $30 in YSRPs, which are as good as cash to be used on the site to play and win real money. So you got NBA contests running out today, of course, and the $250,000 baller for NFL this Sunday, $25,000 to first. Also some lower stakes tournaments and some no management fee contests if you can get in early enough before they fill. So a lot to do over there on Yahoo. Use the link, use the sign-up code AWESOMO, get your $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points. They are the sponsor of the Deeper Dive. All right, man, let's jump into it. We've got 3 games on the docket. We'll start with Detroit and Atlanta. Really, there's not a whole lot we can do with this game until we know, well, there's plenty. I mean, we know what's going on with Drummond and a few other players, but the Markieff Morris news is really important. He didn't have a great game yesterday, played around 22 minutes, but he jacked up 11 shots, is the starting power forward, and is questionable to play after getting banged up in that debut last night.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the biggest news we're waiting on the slate. Morris, if he sits, obviously it opens up even better value or even more value with Thonmaker probably getting the biggest bump, but also potentially Christian Wood getting more minutes after only playing 3.5 last night. It would at least give us some options to mix guys in from that front court. But if he does play, he's really interesting because he was really popular last night. He played reasonably well when he was in there, played 22 minutes, had 17.5 DraftKings points, but then didn't play at all in the fourth quarter or most of the third quarter. So with our current ownership projections on DraftKings, we only have him at 14%. If he's starting again, like if he's ruled in and starting again, I'm getting way more than that, even if I project him for like 26 minutes, if the ownership's going to be that low. So my guess is that if he is ruled in starting and a later ownership update, it increases. But it's a good value play in Morris if he's in, and if he's out, it opens up even cheaper guys.
And as we saw yesterday with Luke Kennard, like, there are not that many mouths to feed on this team. There will be opportunities for players not named Andre Drummond, and it's not even like Andre Drummond is this massive usage player. And yes, he had a ridiculous 30-20 game. One of the most impressive performances you'll see this season, and it happened on the first night. A phenomenal shot blocker, averaged 1.7 steals and 1.7 blocks last year, had a ton of those 20-20 performances. But Andre Drummond's not going to shoot 25 times a game, right? He's going to be efficient. He's going to clean up around the rim, and he's going to get most of his opportunities within 3 or 5 feet of the basket. That's still going to open things up for other players, which is why I want to talk a little bit about Derrick Rose here. not a phenomenal game yesterday by any standard, but he was still involved, and he played 26 plus minutes off the bench. Is going to be somebody, especially if Reggie Jackson, who is playing tonight, continues to struggle. He shot only 3 times in 20 minutes yesterday. Rose played 26-35 off the bench, had 18, 3, and 9. What are your thoughts on a really respectably priced Derrick Rose here against a Hawks team last year that led the league in pace, was bottom 3 in defensive rating, just a really bad team, and I don't see that changing this season at all, trying to develop all this youth talent?
Yeah, I think that Rose is a pretty strong option here. He's not getting a ton of ownership, which is kind of surprising to me. I thought that going Jackson over Rose would be pretty contrarian today, but we have them projected for similar ownership. I'm expecting around 26 minutes from Rose. One thing that concerns me is that we didn't see him play any minutes alongside Reggie Jackson yesterday. I think going forward, maybe you'll see some time where they're sharing the backcourt, but that concerns me a little bit because obviously I don't think the plan for Jackson all season long is to only play 20 minutes a night. If Jackson goes out there and torches Trae Young and is playing well and plays like 26 minutes, does that mean Rose only plays 22, or do they just play them alongside each other? We don't really have an answer to that question yet. So if you're looking for one thing to be concerned about, I think it would be that. But with his ownership as low as it is and still at a reasonable salary, I think Rose is still a good play.
And look, I think it's a very reasonable point, but I just don't see, even against Atlanta, I don't see many circumstances where Reggie Jackson goes out there and slaughters anyone. I mean, go ahead.
Without Blake Griffin on the floor since last season, Reggie Jackson has a 30.5% usage percentage.
What's his per minute production?
1.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, it's fine. But
But my point was, like, if we think he's actually going to go out there and be aggressive like he has in the past without Griffin, he's not in a bad matchup. He's getting first shot to do well. What happens if he plays well? What happens to Rose's minutes?
No, totally understand what you're saying. But one thing we saw a lot with Reggie Jackson last year too, though, is he averaged 28 minutes per game, which for your average starter is less than you would expect it to be. I thought Reggie Jackson would play more than that last season, so I don't know if that is the case. I guess what would you expect to see, like 28 minutes and 24? Because I don't see us. Let me put it to you this way. I don't envision a scenario where Reggie Jackson's going out there and playing 34 minutes.
Right. I agree. I have them both at 26, and that's assuming that they play like 4 minutes alongside each other. My assumption is that the reason they didn't play alongside each other at all yesterday had more to do with Jackson playing poorly than with Dwayne Casey intentionally just not playing them at all alongside each other. So I have them both at 26 minutes. It's just that, there's at least some percentage chance that he doesn't intend on playing them alongside each other, and that when Jackson plays well, you get more of like a 26-22 split in favor of Jackson.
Okay. Yeah, and Jackson's first rotation was pretty similar to everyone else outside of Andre Drummond. He was out there for 6.5 minutes before getting the hook, but then returned to start the second quarter and played only 4 minutes. And then, of course, in the third quarter, you saw basically a hockey line change from Dwayne Casey, with nearly the entire lineup coming out and being subbed. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. But Reggie Jackson had pretty similar rotations in the first, second, third, and fourth quarter. The only reason I bring that up, and I agree, I don't think he's going to be a 20-minute per game guy, but it wasn't like Dwayne Casey gave him a long leash out of the gate and then totally changed up his rotation in the second half. I mean, he played 4 minutes in the second quarter and 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. Maybe he is going to be like a 22, 24 minute per game guy. I guess we have to find out.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll get more information going forward, but as long as he stays in the starting lineup, I just can't imagine that's the plan.
What are your thoughts on the rest of this team? Luke Kennard with 30 points yesterday. Definitely an outlier performance, but again, with Blake Griffin off the floor, there are no high usage bodies on this lineup.
Yeah, I like Kennard coming off the bench because he does get opportunities to score. He has the ball in his hands a lot. One thing definitely worth pointing out from yesterday, if you look at the final box score, obviously it was really, really good regardless of salary, but he shot the lights out in the third and fourth quarter. On top of that, he wasn't intended to play as many minutes as he did. He was supposed to be subbed out think it was early in the fourth quarter. He was fouled, and so he went to the free throw line, but Bruce Brown was waiting to check in for him. He obviously couldn't check in then because he was on the line. And then right after that, Kennard hit, I think it was like 3 straight threes, and they just kind of left him in. So he played almost the entire fourth quarter. He ended up at 28 minutes, but I think that there's a decent chance or a good chance he gets less than that today.
What else from Detroit? Anything else other than Luke Kennard stand out to you? I mean, if you want to, we should probably touch on Drummond. Yeah. I say that jokingly because everybody knows how good of a play he is today. But you can elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's the best play on the slate on DraftKings at 8,300. I think that on FanDuel, he's a really good play as well. We talked about it yesterday that without Griffin on the floor last season, he had a 26% usage percentage. He had a 27% rebounding percentage. Yesterday, he was going up against a really undersized front court with Miles Turner and Sabonis. Today, he's getting Alex Len and I'm drawing a blank, but it's
John Collins. Damian Jones, you mean?
Bruno Fernando, most likely, possibly Damian Jones. It's still not a front court that I'm scared of for Drummond. He played 41 minutes last night. Even if we don't see that, I still expect big minutes out of him. He talked after the game about how he worked really hard this offseason to get in better shape because he knew he was going to need to play monster minutes this season. So I think that his rotation was more or less by design last night. It's not like you had guys getting in foul trouble and Drummond having to come back in or something. So even if, we don't see 41 minutes again, I think that we get plenty of minutes in a spot that he should be really productive.
Yeah. Dwayne Casey had actually joked about playing him for 48 minutes. Maybe he wasn't joking.
Yeah. Maybe this was just a warm-up game for Drummond.
Yeah. Normally I'd say back-to-back, he played 41 minutes. And look, I still factor that in. But second game of the season, unless he's totally not conditioned, I think this is not something to worry about. But I don't know. Let me ask you this. What are you projecting for Drummond's minutes tonight? I have him around 35.
I have him at 36. Okay. I just don't really go over 36 outside of really unusual circumstances, and him playing 41 minutes in one game isn't enough for me to start projecting him for 40 minutes a night. But the other thing is that even if he plays 36, if he plays 34, like he would have to play, 28 minutes or something for him not to be a really, really good play. So I'm not concerned about his minutes getting that low.
No. Even if it's on a back-to-back, I'm certainly not concerned about it either. On the other side of this game, you've got Atlanta. John Collins is one of those guys I alluded to that, I'm still going to have some John Collins today, but I feel like on other nights, if pricing was a little sharper at the top, I'd have a lot more John Collins. And, it was only one game from the Pistons yesterday, but I posted this on Twitter. All of Domantas Sabonis's shots from last night. It's actually amazing how much Detroit struggled in the paint, in the restricted area, around the basket. Sabonis was 8 for 10 on shots within 3 feet of the rim, 10 from 12 in the paint, and Drummond couldn't hang with him. Drummond's a great player, but he couldn't hang with him. Anytime he hit him with any small post move, he was cooked, and it was just very easy, it seemed, to get points inside the paint. I think John Collins has a lot of similarities in that he's going to work around the basket. He's going to rack up those big double-doubles. Tougher rebounding matchup for sure, but Alex Len's rebounding over the past couple of years has declined a bit, and I think John Collins is in a very favorable spot here on a team where outside of Trae Young, there's not a single high-usage player.
Yeah, I agree with you. Collins averaged 1.19 DraftKings points per minute last season. I think that there's no real reason to think he doesn't play big minutes tonight. Played 30 minutes in Atlanta's most recent dress rehearsal in the preseason. I have him projected for about 35 minutes tonight. I think he's a really good play. And like you said, the issue is that getting to mid-range guys is kind of difficult on this slate because the top range is so underpriced, especially with how we have ownership right now. It's not like you're getting, 80% ownership to guys like Giannis or Harden or Curry. So when you're getting, 30 to 40% ownership on those guys, or 20 to 30% on someone like John Collins, and it's not difficult to get to those top guys, it filters some ownership or some of my exposure to Collins out. But he is one of my favorite mid-range guys at only 7,300 on DraftKings.
Yeah, me too. Trae Young's harder to get to on DraftKings, where he's $300 less than Westbrook. He's $800 less than Stephen Curry. He's $800 more than D'Angelo Russell. I expect to see a big season from Trae Young with a ton of turnovers and a lot of points and a ton of assists. But at his price point, how are you approaching him?
It's really difficult for me to get there. I like the idea of it in tournaments because he's not projected for a lot of ownership, and it obviously is really, really difficult to get there. And we know he has a ton of upside. The issue is that even though he has a ton of upside, he doesn't have James Harden, or I don't want to phrase it like he doesn't have it, but his likelihood of putting up, one of those just absolute monster like 60, 70 point games is still so much lower than James Harden or Steph Curry without Durant and Thompson and Cousins, or Giannis, or I think even Drummond.
I'd throw Westbrook in there too, just based
Westbrook too
on DraftKings with the triple double bonuses too. I mean, that makes a difference.
Right. I'm not really that high on Westbrook in the context of the slate, but I still have him projected for like 4 points more than Trae Young at the same or basically the same salary. So it's just that the opportunity cost is really high. It would be one thing if you had this kind of ownership on Trae Young and the guys around him were like the Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, like those type guys where they're better, but they're going to lose a lot or a high percentage of the time to Young. Young's just not going to outscore James Harden and Steph Curry all that often.
Nope, he certainly isn't. On FanDuel, I'll ask, he's 9K, Westbrook is 10K, Curry's 10-3. And then at other positions, of course, you got Harden at 11-4, Giannis at 12-2, Drummond at 10-3. Is that still a little bit steep for Trae Young for you?
I think it's more appealing on FanDuel because for one, you have to roster the 2 point guards and you can't, mix in shooting guards. The bottom of the point guard position is really bad. I think that 9K for Young on FanDuel is more appealing than 8,900 on DraftKings.
Okay. What about the wings situation here? You got rookies in the mix. You've got return players who have never been particularly great fantasy producers, but are very cheap. DeAndre Bembry, 32 on DraftKings, 38 on FanDuel. Cam Reddish looking like he'll play around 20 minutes. Kevin Huerter, who was out this preseason, will return, but his minutes will be limited. You got DeAndre Hunter as well, who was a lottery pick, a 3-and-D guy who showed some playmaking abilities in preseason, but in large part should still be considered a 3-and-D guy. What are you doing here with these wings tonight?
Rotating him through. I think that Bembry on DraftKings is a really good cash option. I think he's fine in tournaments too because he's 3,200. I have him projected for about 26 minutes. He averaged 0.85 DraftKings points per minute last season, and he's got guard forward eligibility. So it's really appealing, but he also is going to get a lot of ownership. He's unlikely to put up a really good score in terms of raw points. It's just a really good point per dollar play that opens up the guys at the top. So I think he's a good option, but in tournaments, you can kind of, I don't mind taking the risk of mixing and matching some lower probability guys that have similar ceilings, even from this team, Cam Reddish or Hunter. But I think that Bembry is one of the best point per dollar options on the slate.
Okay. Yeah. It doesn't feel great, but on a 3-gamer, I don't really see an issue with it at all. Like Hunter, again, you're probably hoping for some spot up opportunities, maybe, some steals, chase down block. But how many minutes do you think Hunter gets here?
I have him at 30.
Yeah, me too. What do you have Bembry at? Around 27?
26.
26, yeah. Okay. And we already know what we're going to get from Huerter and Reddish. They should be splitting these. So, well, maybe less than splitting them, but still be very limited. How about Alex Len?
I like him, especially on DraftKings where you can roster 2 centers. Obviously on FanDuel, there's monster opportunity cost because if you're rostering Len, you can't roster Drummond. But on DraftKings, you can roster them both. No Dwayne Dedmon on the Hawks this year. Your backups here are going to be either Damian Jones or Bruno Fernando. In the Hawks dress rehearsal, Fernando played over Jones, but I think it could be either one. But either way, I think that Len has a shot at consistent minutes for like one of the first times ever in his career. It's obviously a big center in Drummond as well. I have Len at 28 minutes here. He's always been a productive fantasy player and he's pretty cheap. So I think that maybe people shy away a little bit because, Alex Len's always been a very volatile, inconsistent player. But I think that he's actually a pretty good value today.
Let me preface this with, I like Alex Len as well. But it feels like no matter where he is, no matter who his coach is, he'll find a way to squander away big playing time.
Yeah, I was thinking that as I said it. Like, he projects to have a consistent role, but 2 weeks from now, you're going to have Budenholzer being like, I think we need to play 3 centers.
Lloyd Pierce.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. But I knew what you meant.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't right when I said it. I just couldn't think of who it was.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he did coach for the Hawks.
Yeah, he's still in the league.
So he's still a coach. A good one at that. Anything else from this game?
So to get back to the Atlanta wing rotation, right now, looking at our projected ownership and my crunch before the show, I'm basically just matching the field on these guys. If there were one that ended up being a lot lower owned, I'd be interested. Like, if Jabari Parker's ownership really goes down, he's a guy that you can take a shot on in tournaments. But right now we have him at 14%. I don't feel the need to go higher than that. Cam Reddish is at 13%. I'm right around there. I'm basically matching on Bembry. So I don't have like a huge stand that I'm taking on any of these guys. I'm kind of just rotating them through because they are quality value options in terms of points per dollar.
Okay. Milwaukee and Houston. This is where it starts to get a little bit wild. James Harden on DraftKings is 9,700. Russell Westbrook's 8,900. Giannis Antetokounmpo is 10,300. And there's a lot of guys that are way cheaper than they should be, and I'd expect to see these adjustments made pretty quickly. But let's really just dive into this Harden-Westbrook situation. I know you said you don't have a ton of Westbrook today, but and understandably so with the amount of other options out there. The one thing that people are forgetting when they say, oh man, Harden's production is going to take a huge hit because of Westbrook. Westbrook's going to see his numbers annihilated because of Harden. Westbrook he's never played with anyone quite like James Harden, but he played almost a decade with Kevin Durant. He played last 2 years with Paul George, 2 All-Stars, 1 Hall of Famer, and now he's playing with Harden. So the fact that he's playing with Harden, clearly going to siphon away usage, assist opportunities, per minute production is going to come down. But the big question here is, outside of these 2 guys, name anyone that creates their own shot. Name anyone that's a legitimate threat. Clint Capella is going to rely on either rebounds or Westbrook or Harden to get his buckets. Westbrook's still one of the best. He's probably the best rebounding guard in the game, not including Ben Simmons. And Harden is still going to absolutely smash every night because these 2 guys will have their minutes staggered by D'Antoni. And I just don't see anyone else on this roster that really threatens them, Adam.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The best rebounding guard part, I think that has a lot to do with if Clint Capella agrees to make that happen. But outside of that, the point you made about Durant is a really big one because I personally kind of forgot that Durant was there for so long. And I was trying to think, like, over the last couple of years, like, who Westbrook's played with that I could try and use as like a James Harden proxy. But if you go back to the 2015, 2016 season, Durant played 72 games. Westbrook averaged 1.44 DraftKings points per minute. He had a 31.7% usage percentage, 46.8% assist percentage. And we know that the minutes are going to be staggered. In the preseason, he had a 30.8% usage percentage. His assist percentage was down around 30%. But again, we're talking 4 games that he played. Assist percentage isn't going to stabilize that quickly. So, I think that you probably get him right around like 40%. I think that he's still a high upside play. He's still a strong option, especially at this price tag. The reason that I'm not getting a lot of him is twofold. For one, he's getting plenty of ownership. Right now on DraftKings, we have him projected for 30% ownership. So it's not like I'm getting a huge edge on the field by rostering a bunch of him, but also he's just comparable in price to guys like Curry and Harden, who are really, 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 really underpriced. Not that Westbrook isn't. It's just that I think Curry and Harden are in like a different level from Westbrook. So for that reason, I'm not really getting to him today. If his ownership were to drop a bunch, then I would start getting there because I do have him projected as the 5th highest scorer on the slate. It's just that the 4 I have ahead of him are a lot ahead of him. All
right. So where are you at on James Harden, who is $9,700 on DraftKings and on FanDuel 11.4? More reasonably priced there. 97 on DraftKings is ridiculous.
Yeah, I have 95% on DraftKings right now.
There you go.
FanDuel, yeah, it's a little bit tougher, like you said, because the positions are different too. So you can't roster him at 2 different positions. He's also just much more expensive than guys like D'Angelo Russell and Lou Will. Whereas DraftKings, he's just so underpriced. So I think shooting guard on FanDuel is different because like FanDuel, you have to compare across positions, obviously. Giannis is still more expensive than Harden, but the small forward position is not really that appealing in terms of raw points. The shooting guard position, you have guys that can score, with Russell, Williams, Rose. So less of a priority for sure on FanDuel.
Okay. Yeah, I would say the same. Any interest here in Clint Capella or anyone else on this team?
Not a lot in Capella just because of Drummond, really. No, I'm sorry. Most of my center exposure is going to Drummond. So it's really tough to get to Capella. Obviously, you also have Alex Len. You also have other guys that you can rotate through at center. PJ Tucker is a reasonable value option. He doesn't do anything when he's on the floor, but he should play 34, 35 minutes. You can say something similar for Eric Gordon, probably playing 30 to 32 minutes. Unlikely to have a big game, but guys that I don't mind rotating through if I'm playing 150 lineups.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're not playing 150 lineups, they definitely fall to the wayside.
Yeah, no question.
Talk to me about Giannis Antetokounmpo here. 10-3 on DraftKings, which is still too cheap. 12-2 on FanDuel. So, I mean, just a huge gap in pricing there, especially compared to the other players at their position or at the other positions. But the big thing is small forward is a really weak position today. On FanDuel, you have to play two of them. But even on DraftKings, I know you had told me how much Giannis you had before the show started, and I would imagine that a lot of that, the reason you don't have 90% is because you're just flat out punting small forward.
Yeah, exactly. I have him projected as the top scorer on the slate, but it's not by a big margin over Harden. It's a bigger gap to Curry, but then you also have Drummond up there who's way, way cheaper. So I'm over the field right now based on projected ownership on Giannis, have him in about half my lineups. But there is good point per dollar value at small forward today. There's not a very good mid range. So it makes it a little bit easier to go to the value there and then make sure I have the money for, Curry and Harden and Russell and whoever else at guard.
So Giannis in this spot, the team is not that much different than before. Mirotic is, playing overseas, and Malcolm Brogdon is in Indiana. But aside from that, you still have, your two highest usage non-Giannis players in Chris Middleton and in Eric Bledsoe. I don't know how much you see changing in this one. Or on this team. By the way, Markieff Morris will play today. So
yeah, so still waiting on the starting lineup, I think, but Keith is playing.
Yeah.
I don't really expect much to change for Giannis. Maybe a little bit of a bump in terms of assists, but you still have Bledsoe there. Last season, averaged
1.76 fantasy points per minute.
I had it at 1.02 and I was really confused, but it's because I had
That's probably not it.
I had the 2015-16 season pulled up because I had been looking at Westbrook. 1.67 DraftKings points per minute for Giannis last year, 32.6% usage. Obviously a great, one of the best DFS or one of the best fantasy per minute performers. So I love getting to Giannis. He's really expensive on FanDuel, but we talked about it a lot that it's not just point per dollar. Like you have to pick up, obviously the goal is to score as many points as you can. And if you're like punting the small forward position, you're just losing out on a lot of raw points from guys like Giannis and Kawhi at the top. So even though he is expensive, I think that he's a better play on FanDuel, I think, than he is on DraftKings, even though he's considerably more expensive.
Yeah. Oh, no question. It's totally a scarcity thing here. The rest of this team, where do you stand on guys like Middleton and Bledsoe? And, I'll throw his name into the mix just because Brook Lopez, knowing that we're going to have to pay, or we should be paying up for, all of these high price studs. We already said that we liked John Collins. I'm pretty sure we're both going to say that we like Montrezl Harrell. So and Draymond with no Durant, with no Cousins, definitely plays a role in a slate like this. Is there any way you can squeak guys like Middleton and Bledsoe into lineups without, doing something you don't want to do?
I mean, you can. They certainly have upside, but I'm not doing it. This is a spot where I'm coming underweight on the entire team with the exception of Giannis. That on a lot of slates, that won't be the case because I actually like the Bucks from a DFS standpoint because they play fast, they're really good, and they have concentrated production. But on this particular slate, I think that the pricing on guys like Bledsoe and Middleton, well, it's cheaper than it should be. It's not egregious like it is on some other guys. So I'm coming in considerably underweight on them.
All right. So I'll ask you, is there anything else on this in this game?
No, I don't think so.
All right. The final one here, Golden State and the LA Clippers. Stephen Curry in the preseason had 33% usage rate, 33% assist rate. Outside of D'Angelo Russell's 29% usage rate, no one was even close to Curry. Of course, it's just preseason, but I'll go ahead and let you rattle off what the numbers looked like without guys like Thompson and Cousins last year. And I think it's worth explaining why you would run it with certain guys off. Like I said on Tuesday, I think it was, that I could easily, just replace Elfrid Payton for Lonzo and not worry about running a query with him off the court. Explain why you would run it with one guy off and not the other guy off when we're talking about Kevin Durant, even though he's a different position than Klay Thompson.
Right. So Josh and I talked about it a bit this morning, and my goal basically to try and get Curry's rates is I didn't want Cousins on the floor, and I didn't want one of Thompson or Durant on the floor, but you still have to have some sort of proxy out there for D'Angelo Russell. Like, you don't want numbers from when Curry's just out there by himself with Draymond Green, because then his usage rate's going to be up, 41, 45%.
And you're getting like 70 total minutes.
Right. Exactly. So I originally was running it with Klay on the floor and with Cousins and Durant off, which I think is fine. But Josh had a good point that Durant does handle the ball a lot more than Klay does. Point. Yeah. And obviously Russell handles the ball. In addition to that, if you look at the numbers last year, if you run it with Klay on and with Durant and Cousins off, you only got about 111 minutes. If you run it with Thompson and Cousins off and Durant on, you get about like 350 minutes. In that case, Curry had a 37.5% usage percentage, 23.6% assist percentage. One thing to keep in mind is that I expect the minutes between him and Russell to be staggered. So there will be, about 30% of Curry's time on the floor where he does have that 40+% usage percentage because Russell isn't out there. But even if you don't account for that, even if you just take those rates from when he played alongside Durant without Cousins or Klay last year, he still is going to come out as one of the best plays on the slate.
Okay. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. Really, the way I look at it is Stephen Curry a lot of times doesn't get put in that same category as James Harden and Giannis. And to some extent he isn't, but taking Kevin Durant off the floor, like taking Curry and Cousins off the floor, Adam, you can try and convince me that D'Angelo Russell is going to make a dent. Like, yeah, of course, if it was just Curry, he'd be $12,000 by early November. But with just D'Angelo Russell, no Durant, no Thompson, no Cousins, this is now a version of Stephen Curry that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Yeah, exactly. And Russell being out there, I mean, it's just another guy the defense at least has to respect. But I expect, Curry to. It's the first time that we've really ever seen like a peak Steph Curry without a bunch of other mouths to feed. So really excited about him from a DFS standpoint this year. And I think that right now projected ownership on him is too low.
Yeah. What about the Draymond Greens of this world? I know you don't have a ton of him. Neither do I. I'm actually slightly concerned about it. Just knowing that, look, he's a 1.07 fantasy point per minute guy. If you took Durant off the floor last season, if you took Cousins off the floor last year, and he's never going to be a high usage guy, right? His usage will float around like 17, 18, 19%, really probably 17, 18% regardless. But he's a quality rebounder, a very good facilitator, and he's someone that can get you those stocks, right? Stocks plus blocks or steals plus blocks, one or the other. That's one of the reasons why when I see Draymond Green at a good price, I definitely want to consider him. And I also think that, given their lack of quality front court depth, you could start seeing him play more minutes than he did last season, start averaging around 35 again, opposed to the 32 that he was mostly seeing in 2018.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't feel very good about not having Draymond today either. But the reason I'm okay with it is if you look right now at projected ownership and point projections, we have Draymond at slightly higher ownership than Harrell. We have him at higher ownership than John Collins. He's way more expensive than Harrell. He's about the same price as John Collins, but Green is, a 1 to 1.1 fantasy point per minute player. Collins is about 1.2 points per minute. Harrell approaches 1.2 points per minute. I think they all play similar minutes tonight. You get not as much confidence in that in Harrell's minutes as in Collins and Draymond, but you get a salary discount there anyway. It's just if they're all going to be similarly owned, or if Green's going to be the highest owned of the group, and they all project, in my opinion, Harrell and Collins project better than Green. If you take that stand every single time you get the opportunity and just get more of the two guys that you're projecting better at the expense of the guy that you don't like as much, you're not going to be right every single slate. There's going to be slates where it burns you, but if you take that opportunity every single time, you're going to come out ahead at the end of the season.
All right. Okay, well, actually, let's talk about D'Angelo Russell for a moment. What are your thoughts on Russell here in his debut with the Warriors, who, by the way, if you want to see anything potentially signaling a changing of the guard in the Western Conference or in the NBA overall, the Warriors open these games as dogs at home. When's the last time you saw that happen?
Yeah, it's nuts. It makes sense. The Clippers are great, but that's pretty unbelievable. It's another reason that I think Curry's going to have just an absolutely phenomenal DFS season. Like, they're going to play so many competitive games down to the end. But
yeah, where are you at on Russell though?
Yeah. As far as Russell, obviously don't know exactly what to make of him. It's the first regular season game we're getting of him alongside Steph, but his salary is affordable. He's clearly the second option on this offense. He's capable of creating. He's a good scorer. I think he's going to get, 12 to 14 minutes without Steph on the floor as well, where it's just going to be the D'Angelo Russell show. So right now I'm getting right around the field on him. We have him on DraftKings projected at 26% ownership. I think in my most recent crunch, I had 30%. I'm fine being there. I wouldn't be upset if I got more. But the thing that keeps me from getting a little bit more is that, not only do you have Steph and Harden at the guard spots, but you have Lou Will for less. You have, that Derrick Rose, Reggie Jackson range. You have some value guards as well. So I'm pretty comfortable coming in around, 30-ish% on Russell.
How do you feel about guys like Kevon Looney and Marcus Chris?
Chris is one of my highest owned guys on DraftKings specifically. He's $3,200 there. He has forward and center eligibility. I'm not super confident in where his minutes end up, but he did play really well in the preseason. Kevon Looney is back. I have Looney at 26 minutes. I have Chris at 20. I think that one way or the other, you probably get around 20 minutes from Chris. And he's just really, really cheap. So I'm fine getting there. I'm not getting to as much Looney. I prefer going to Alex Len at a similar price point. Kevon Looney in the past has been a 0.9 fantasy point per minute player. I'm not overly confident in where exactly his minutes end up today in his first game back after missing the preseason. So I'm not nearly as interested in him as in Chris, even though I expect him to play more minutes and score more points.
All right. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Marcus Chris as a player. Defensively and as a rebounder, he's always lacked a lot. But what alternatives do we have when you kind of feel obligated to jam in all these studs?
Right. And I want to backtrack a little bit, because I said that I liked him specifically on DraftKings. I meant that in that I had crunched for DraftKings and knew I liked him a lot there. But at 3,800 on FanDuel, also at a pretty weak power forward position, I think that you're not. It's a risk worth taking there as well.
Okay. The LA Clip. Well, is there anything else for the Golden State Warriors?
I don't think so.
All right. So with the Clippers.
Oh, hang on. Just not as a core player or anything like that, but it's just a 150 entry max player. Glenn Robinson probably playing like 28 minutes at basically minimum salary.
All right. So check this out. Lou Williams on Tuesday had 17 potential assists. It led the team by 10. Kawhi Leonard was second with 7. Led the team in touches by 29. He had 86 or 89 and played almost 37 minutes. I'm not projecting Lou Williams to play that many minutes, but those are some really encouraging numbers. He and Montrezl Harrell have an excellent rapport in the pick and roll. They work really well with each other, and Lou Williams just seems to be someone that, with Kawhi Leonard in this offense, his minutes will be staggered a bit, of course, coming off the bench. But I mean, he's a starter coming. He's a starter minutes player coming off the bench. Normally, I wouldn't say that, but in the opening night, he plays almost 37 minutes.
Yeah, I think so. The first game for the Clippers went rotation wise entirely different than I expected. I thought we were going to get flatter minute rotations there. But
you didn't think Montrezl Harrell would play 38 minutes?
I did not think Montrezl Harrell would play 38 minutes.
Strange.
I did not think Lou Williams would play 36.7 minutes. But the thing about those guys is that even if they play 30 minutes, they're good plays at their salaries, and they obviously have the potential to play more. Lou Will is the backup point guard, which is nice. Gives him, obviously he has the ball in his hands a ton anyway, but gives him, more assist opportunities, like you said. So I like him. I like Harrell a lot. It's a good matchup, I think, for Harrell to stay on the floor. It was a bigger Lakers front court with McGee and Howard playing most of the minutes at center, and you still got 38 minutes out of Harrell. Now you have a front court or a center position of Looney and Chris, an undersized front court where it's even easier for Harrell to stay out there. So I feel really good about Harrell. I like Lou Will. I like this Clippers team a lot because you have those two guys that I think are two of my favorite mid-range plays where I can get to those guys because they produce so well on a per minute basis. But then you also have Pat Beverly, who's 4,600 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he's 5,100 at point guard position. That's pretty weak at the bottom. He's not the best per minute producer, but he clearly has a defensive role in this game going up against Steph Curry and D'Angelo Russell. He's probably going to play around 32 minutes, and he's just really cheap. So I think that Beverly is a pretty good value option on the slate, in addition to liking Williams and Harrell.
From a real life standpoint, Patrick Beverly might be the most important player in this game. I mean, they're gonna rely on him to play that same scrappy defense and try and at least slow Curry down a little bit, right. or D'Angelo Russell. I mean, that's where all of their firepower is going to be coming from. Patrick Beverly, I actually wouldn't be surprised if he plays. I'm not projecting him for this, Adam, but if Beverly played 36 minutes, I wouldn't be shocked.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah, just based on how this game. I mean, they'll have him guard bigger players, small players. It doesn't really matter. Just get him out there. You see him trying to win that jump ball against Anthony Davis the other night?
Yeah, and pissing off Davis in the process by just jumping into him before.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. I love his style of play. I know he pisses some people off, but I'm a big fan.
I'll never forget that Lonzo Ball game.
Oh, yeah. All right, so what about well, we talked about Lou. It is kind of tough to get there, but I think he's always one of these tournament options that has the ability to erupt for 30 plus real points out of nowhere, especially if he's getting those type of minutes. But Montrezl Harrell, 38 minutes. Go watch his opportunities. You don't even have to watch the whole game. Go to NBA.com, the stats, and you can watch individually each one of his field goal attempts. Him and Lou Williams and even Kawhi Leonard a couple times in the pick and roll were just carving up the Lakers. We saw him do that with Lou Williams a lot last season. Work out of the pick and roll, also get some opportunities to clean up around the basket. And Montrezl Harrell's stats from last season, of course, this is before Kawhi Leonard, but they're still important nevertheless. His stats from last season, 23% usage, 13% total rebounding, 12.5% assists, 4% block rate. None of those numbers are eye-popping, but combined, he makes for a very valuable player, especially if he's getting big run each night.
Yeah, 1.17 DraftKings points per minute for Harrell last season. Shouldn't be a great defensive front court for the Clippers that he's going up against, or for the Warriors that he's going up against. And the minutes I think should be there in this matchup. Probably not 38 of them, but we only saw Zubats play 9 minutes against a big front court. I think that you see, plenty of minutes again for Harrell. The one thing I will point out, I'm personally right now not planning on getting to a lot of it, but on these 2 and 3 game slates, when you have these center rotations where it's basically going to be one of two guys on the floor, even though it's unlikely that Zubats plays a bunch of minutes here, I don't mind in these large field tournaments taking a shot at him, just because if he somehow gets 16 minutes, he's going to pay off a $3,500 salary. But that being said, since he is a center on this particular slate, I still think it's a really tough spot.
All right. Top plays from the Clippers.
Harrell, Bev, Williams.
Okay. Top plays from the Warriors.
Steph, Chris, just because of the value and what he opens up, and Russell.
All right.
So we didn't touch on Kawhi, and for anyone new that doesn't already know my Kawhi take every single time.
Yeah, I need to be better. I need to be better about that because I already knew where you were going, and I completely.
Yeah, Kawhi's great. He's underpriced. So is every other player on the slate. When you have Kawhi at DraftKings, when you have Kawhi at 9,100, but you have Curry at 94, you have Harden at 97. I'm just never really getting to Kawhi. On FanDuel, though, it is totally different because, again, the small forward position, the only guys at this position that are giving you any sort of raw point upside are Giannis and Kawhi. And Kawhi comes in, $2,400 less expensive than Giannis. So I think Kawhi is the best small forward option probably on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, I have no interest.
All right. I'm with you there. Hey, by the way, we'll get to our top plays right here to close out the show. Live Before Locks coming up next. And awesemo.com/join is where you can get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus membership. That's right. So ownership projections, players projections, the Boomer Bust tool, top stacks tool for baseball, basketball, and football. If they have DFS contests offered on any of these sites, we've got content for it. Got a lot of free content, good free content out there. But you want to get a look behind the paywall, use the sign-up code DEEPERDIVE, all one word, get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus subscription. And if you go to awesemo.com/join, what you'll see is we have an Express Pass as well, $3.95 a week. So if you're more of a hobby player, you're just getting into it and you don't want to fork out actual money for it, not a lot of money for it, check out the Express Pass. And of course, take our quick survey. When you hit begin membership, what you'll see is we'll ask you one question: what type of player you are, professional, hobbyist, novice, and we cater the subscription and the plan around you so you're not getting too little and you're not getting too much. Deeper Dive, all one word. The website with the man, the face of this Awesemo.com is Awesemo himself, Alex Baker, the number one ranked DFS player in the world. If you're new to Awesemo, if you're new to these shows, that's who's behind all of this wonderfulness. All right, Adam. Let's close it out here. Only 3 games, but who are your top 2 high-end options and top 2 value options for tonight?
It's splitting hairs at the top, but
split away, fella.
There's 4 of them. Drummond is number 1 when you factor in salary. Harden, Steph, I guess, number 2 when you factor in salary. It's really, really close.
It is really close and difficult. But you know what? Some people are only playing 1 or 2 lineups and
play whichever is lower owned out of Harden and Curry.
Okay. Also,
or play both.
2 value options.
DeAndre Bembry, Marquise Chris.
Yeah, that just feels horrible. I mean, I agree with you.
It's not going to be fun.
No, I agree. I'm with you.
What will be fun is having 3 of Giannis.
And here's one for you. Your biggest fade for tonight.
Draymond. Hang on, let me see the ownership projections right now. Russell Westbrook.
Draymond and Russell Westbrook. All right. Yeah. I'll throw into the mix. Not that I'm not fading him, but or them. But when it comes to Giannis, Harden, Curry, and Westbrook, I'm going to leave Leonard out of that. You can only play so much of every one. And really the thought and the hope is that the one that you have less of doesn't end up burning you. So I guess we'll see. But here you got it. Your first game with Harden and Westbrook together. Stephen Curry without Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant for the first time in a while. Any final thoughts before we head out?
Definitely a stars and scrubs slate. I wouldn't get cute and try and play a bunch of mid-range guys thinking you're being contrarian. I think that's one thing that people tend to do, but when the stars are as underpriced as they are right now, you really don't want to do that.
Okay. Well, hey, that'll do it for us. Live Before Locks coming up momentarily. Stick around. We'll see you back here tomorrow to close out the work week on the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports.